not be able to make it today, I'll make sure I have this available. So over to you, Rick.
All right. Good afternoon. It's officially the. When I say okay, I know that, like, again, the water level at Earth is like right here, right? So understand that okay is just like a C plus, probably max right now, right? I want to first thank Jane Loxterkamp. She's one of the chairs of the education program here at EMCC. We had some other people lined up to come and speak to you, but unfortunately through cancellations and scheduling things, because again, we're living in the upside down, people had to cancel on us. So what I will do first is I think that I'm gonna go ahead and just talk a little bit about transfer agreements that EMCC has with some of the local colleges and just the benefits to you. And then I'll turn it over to Jane, and she can speak a little bit about the education program, which I am a graduate of, proud graduate, and Autumn is as well. There's Autumn. So I guess I'll just start with the spiel, right? So I know that in past years when we've had orientations on campus, there's been a lot of talk about how like EMCC is a great investment. It's like one of the best investments you can make. And I used to be able to say, even though I'm not getting paid to say this, but I work at the college now, but EMCC really is one of the best investments you can make, especially if you're uncertain about, if you're a liberal studies student or you're just unsure. I paid for my entire undergrad, or my wife paid for my entire undergrad degree out of pocket. I have no debt for my 2 years plus at EMCC. And just breaking it down by the numbers, right? You're talking about cost per credit hour, okay? Hudson University is $612 per credit hour. $612 per credit hour. University of Maine is $308 in-state and $385 out-of-state. EMCC, by comparison, is $96 in-state or $192 out-of-state. So for the cost of one class at Hudson, you can get more than a semester's worth of classes at Eastern Maine Community College. And because EMCC busts their butt to have all these different articulation agreements with these schools, I'm going to share a document in the chat right now with everybody. This is from EMCC's website, okay? I just copied it and put it in a Google Doc so that everyone can have it. These are the transfer agreements with colleges in New England. Now, just because this list is all, I think New England and I think a few online colleges, doesn't mean that you can't transfer somewhere else. Because EMCC is an accredited university, that means that if you wanted to go to school in another state outside of New England, most of your classes should transfer. Not a guarantee, right? I'm not guaranteeing, but most of them should transfer. That's why we have students come from all over the country. We have a lot of veteran students who maybe took classes, on a base in Hawaii, and they come up here and they can transfer those math and English and a lot of those gen eds. So that's an important thing to remember, is it's not just transferring programs. You can also transfer credit. So you want to come here and bang out those 2 years of liberal studies for pennies on the dollar compared to what you would pay at a traditional four-year institution. It's a good deal. So again, personal experience in TRIO, 4 of the 6 TRIO peer mentors are graduates and transfer students from EMCC. So Carrie is here. Carrie, do you mind talking for a second? Can you just tell us what your program was here and what you're doing at UMaine Augusta?
Yeah, I was actually, I graduated with my liberal studies, associates in liberal studies from Eastern Maine, and then I transferred over to UMA to do a bachelor's in science for dental hygiene.
Awesome. Rad. And Dalton, who is not here today, he's another peer mentor. He is a graduate of, I think it's business management. It's a business course here at EMCC, and he's studying education now at Hudson because we pulled him in. Autumn, who is here, she's a secondary ed grad from EMCC, and you're going to graduate from elementary ed this year, Autumn? Is it elementary? Yeah, Autumn copied me, so that's what happened there. I'm a graduate of the secondary ed program here. I'm a UMaine grad, and I'm actually in graduate school right now at the University of Maine. So we're not blowing smoke when we say, it's very easy. The school makes it easy to transfer. See if I have anything else in here. You guys have the document. Before I let Jane speak, I guess what I'll do is just talk about my experience with the education program and transferring, and Autumn will probably back me up. I don't know if anyone is interested in working in the education field who's not already in it, but if you know anybody who is interested in switching from liberal studies or anything to education, take my word, this is the school to do it from. UMaine and EMCC work so well together in getting students prepared to transfer to UMaine. It's so seamless. It was so painless. I already knew my advisor, Faith. We were already on a first name basis the semester before my last semester here. So we were already tight before I had even been accepted to the University of Maine. And by the time I go to like orientations and all these activities, Faith and I, we're already close, so it's no problem, you know. And it's, Faith would tell you when she comes that because of Jane and the other instructors in the education program, because their standards are so high and they produce such quality students, UMaine, like they hunt for EMCC education students. They want us. And I know it's like that with the business program here too with Hudson University. You know, they want our students because we are well trained. We are advanced beyond the traditional incoming junior from EMCC, you know, a junior. We're more experienced and more advanced in our education than a traditional UMaine sophomore is going into that third year. So I'm living proof, and Autumn will tell you the same thing. You know, it's just a more rigorous program here. Plus, as anybody in any program will tell you, you do your science here or your math here, you're not sitting in a class of 500 people at a lecture. You know, I had to take one of those online, Earth Science at UMaine. It stunk because I didn't even talk to the professor. I talked to his grad assistants. But when I took my A&P here, the class was so small that I actually was able to get my instructor to let me into the lab to mess around with the dummies so that I could get that extra studying time trying to figure out where the cervical part of the spine is or where the lumbar spine. You know, you won't get that at UMaine unless you really, really have to dig. Here, it's just part of the culture. We're a small college. We're a community college. You know, we're here to serve the community. So I guess before I turn it over to Jane, does anybody have any sort of questions about the transfer process? And if you do, I'm on a small screen, so if you do have questions, just shout them out. Tasha?
Got a question for you, Rick.
Sure.
When did you start planning the transfer process? Like when did you know, what's the timeline like for students that are looking to transfer to a 4-year?
Beginning of your second semester, before your first year is even over. Like if you have, for me, it was education, right? So I knew, and it might not be the case if you're in liberal studies, but if you know that you want to transfer, you really want to get the ball rolling like after your first semester here, not your first year, because that second year is going to fly by and you don't want to be wasting time, you know, having to get stuff done in the 11th hour. Like, I mean, Mike and Tasha will tell you last year FAFSA opened up and I was like, bang, first day I was in there, get it done. You get it done and over with. You don't have to worry about it for another year. And it's the same thing with the transfer process, especially, again, I don't know how it works now online. And I don't know if maybe Tasha or Mike could speak to this, but when we're in person, you know, Sharon Oliver from University of Maine, the transfer specialist, she's here every other week. And there are people from Hudson who are here all the time. And so again, the same thing with Sharon Oliver. It's like, oh yeah, I know you because I've went and talked to you 700 times because, you know, I ask a lot of questions. But actually, Tasha and Mike, do you know what that's like? Do you know if there are any contacts or liaisons for the transfer process like online right now?
So I don't know. I mean, Mike, you might have more details. I know that there has been conversation about how to facilitate those meetings because Sharon has such a presence here on campus when we're face to face. So I'm not sure where we're at in that process, but I do know that I believe Candace Ward is officially our transfer, that's one of our transfer advisors. But certainly, you know, you can reach out to Candace, reach out to any one of us in student support and success, and we can kind of get you set up with Sharon. But again, I do think, Mike, you might have some more info, but I think we're trying to get some stuff set up for those transfer meetings to happen.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I know that that Sharon from UMaine and the Hudson transfer coordinator, they've been in contact with me and they've made it clear that if any students want to meet with them, that I'm happy to facilitate that, and they're happy to do a one-on-one Zoom with anybody at this point. If you want to take a virtual tour, you can do a virtual tour. I know before the pandemic hit, we actually took a trip to Husson. That was awesome. You know, people got to meet with somebody in their department that they were transferring to, in addition to having lunch on campus and taking a tour at UMaine. We did all that, went to a hockey game. Tasha was appalled by all the fighting, but otherwise we had a very good trip. And so I don't know when we're gonna be able to do those trips again, but as soon as we can, we will, whether that's in the spring or the next fall. But I know that especially because UMaine is still open, and Husson is still open, they can still do individual tours safely there. So it's not like you can't visit those campuses if you're interested in transferring. So if you do have questions and you want to learn more and just have basic questions about the transfer process, or just kind of unsure about what direction you want to go to when you transfer, we can certainly talk to you about it personally, or we can set up a meeting so you can talk to the transfer coordinator at the school that you're interested in.
Awesome. Also, one more thing about, I can only speak again from education and from the UMaine experience. Sharon is like world class. When I met with her to do like my final like transfer of my transcripts, you know, I went to college in Boston and my GPA is like in the negatives. Like everything was F's, and I told her like, I'm real worried that I'm not going to be able to meet the requirement. And Sharon was straight up like, you know what we're going to do with this old transcript? We're just going to throw it all out. And I want to make a note that that's not who you are right now. So if there are any of you guys out there who are maybe curious about, oh no, I didn't do so hot the last time I went to college, like again, I can only speak for UMaine, but when you come from EMCC, UMaine is really just interested in who you are right now, which was a big relief, because when I was like, she was like, show me your grades from Bunker Hill Community College. I was like, oh shit. So I guess I'll ask one more time. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the transfer process from EMCC? No? Okay. So I guess I will turn it over. I'll turn it over to Jane. And Jane, the floor is yours.
Right.
Jane,
So
Jane,
Rick,
again.
can I add some things about transfer?
Yeah.
All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to come and talk to me as soon as you are in EMCC, because I want to see, I don't really want you to wait until after the first semester, because I want to make sure what I know exactly what you're taking now, so that I can start thinking about what I'm going to help you to take for the spring semester. And one of the reasons that we are so seamless, Rick, is we have worked so well. We have transfer agreements with not just UMaine, we have them all over the state with all sorts of education and human service programs. So we have, if you want to be a social worker, you want to be in mental health, or you want to be in human services, we have transfer agreements for all of those. But we've worked so closely that we know what gen eds that they're gonna want to see when you go there. So I'm gonna even really want to pay attention to that and make sure that you're in the right math class. Because for education majors, I have to tell you, choosing your math is probably one of the most complicated things, because all the different colleges have different ideas of what they want. And I want to know that I helped you to take the one that you're going to be successful at, and that's going to help you towards your degree with that, where you're going to go with that. And, you know, people sometimes are anxious because I think they're like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to Jane, because then she'll like, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's okay too. But if I don't have any idea about those things from the very, very, very first time, I'm not going to be able to really help you out as much with them. And we do know, we have people that we know really well, like Faith at Orono and Heather at UMaine Machias and all these other people, you know, and at Husson, we are friends with all these people. So we can help you to connect with that person that we know you should talk to. And so those are some really good things. So talk to us immediately. Just come and say hi. I mean, we are in our virtual offices. On our class list, we put our virtual office there, and it says, you know, make an appointment to come see me in my office, and it's great. So even though it's the best we can do in the pandemic, when we're on campus, you just stop by. And I think a lot of faculty are like that. Go to them and ask them questions. Okay? That's really important, right? Okay, so that's my lecture on transfer, sorry. Right. Education, you know, as some of the great representatives here have been, the education programs are older program. It's been going on for, I've been here 21 years. And we are the only program in the community college system. We are the only one in the whole state who the Department of Education has come and they looked at our programs and they said, yep, you get our approval. And so that's a really big deal. And that's one of the reasons why the colleges are so accepting of our programs is, you know, both, I know Rick and I know Autumn could give you some stories of the high expectations and times when I said, why don't you try again? You know, I think that you were a little rushed or, not quite sure you really got that. Try again. Or, well, and that was okay, and they survived. And so you'll have those moments, and that's okay. But that's why we're, you know, have such great students that go on, and that we have several that have our masters. We have one of our graduates who comes back and teaches a class for us in our department every spring. And the human services program, we just haven't been around long enough. This is only the third year that it's been going. So we've graduated a lot of people in that, and we have a new substance use. Or if you want to be a substance abuse counselor, we have a program for that. So I know that we're going to have people that are going to go on for their masters and perhaps their doctorates and things like that from our programs too. But I don't know what people really want to know, Rick. What else do you think? I mean, are there questions that you guys have about faculty in general? I can try to answer that, or our programs in specifics.
I actually have a question.
Sure, Mike.
So when I was an undergrad, I switched my major from business management to English, and then I was doing really well and liked it. And then I had a teacher who was like, "Hey, what are you gonna do with an English degree?" And I was like, "I don't know." I'm interested in what advice, you know, maybe they think they're gonna eventually transfer and major in English or math or psychology, but then they were like, you know what, I'm not sure I want to go that far, or I think I would rather, you know, teach this at the secondary level. What advice do you have for somebody who gets to that point and they want to make that pivot back to education?
Yeah, I think that if I were going to make that pivot, I would definitely come to our program, no matter where I was at, because, Mike, I'm going to get you out in the classroom. That was something we didn't really talk about. Our students actually go out into the schools their second semester here, and they start working with children. They start working in schools or child cares, because we also have people that want to be family child care providers or work in a Head Start program. So they actually are in there. And if you're thinking of that pivot, and that it gives you that time to really try it out. So I think it's a great idea, because the more broad options you have, the better it's going to be. And you're going to have the gen eds, and so we can help you to look at getting through our program as quickly as possible. And depends on what you have. Every once in a while, if you come to us and you have some of the classes, we can skip you ahead and get you through a little faster, and maybe have you do, you know, the last class here and some classes at the place you're going to transfer. So we know all those options, but that would be a time to certainly make an appointment, talk to myself, talk to Megan, and we'll work with that. In secondary ed, when they want secondary ed, we almost always pull in Cynthia, because she's the expert in that one. She's a secondary ed. She's got that one down just perfect. So while I know it, I usually like, was that the best one? Do you think that, did I miss something I should have forgot? I needed to tell them. So, but we all work as a team. So that would be good question, Mike. Other ideas, other questions?
Mike sort of stole my thunder there, but Jane, you reminded me of something. When you were talking about the grad who comes back to teach, were you talking about Jeannie's class?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. And you also said something else that got my brain working again, is that just because you transfer to UMaine doesn't mean that you can't still take the equivalent classes here,
right.
which is what so many students do. And I don't know if you could just speak to that part of it a little bit more.
Right. So sometimes, I mean, there are students who they need to finish up maybe 1 or 2 of our classes. And so there's the transfer agreements, and so they can take it here and then they can continue on and taking maybe 2 or 3 up there and finish the one they need to do here, just so that it's really individualized to do that. The other thing that does happen, Rick, is that UMaine, Faith will very frequently tell students, oh, go to UMaine. This doesn't fit up, our schedule at UMaine doesn't fit you. Go and take, Jane's class in this, or Heather at University of Maine Machias will say, well, I know Jane has that autism class, that will work. And she does it online, so it's okay if you're not living in Bangor. So there's that interplay between them, and you can, and you guys, people with that, Rick, is I give you the advice academically, and then I say, now you have to go talk to financial aid, because I don't know how financial aid works in splitting it, but I know you can do it. So go talk to them. And I think that's the hardest part, is that there's more than one person you usually have to talk to when you want to do that. But if they're in trio, I think that you guys would probably do that for them, right?
So as far as I'm planning on transferring to Husson after this year, for psychology and then to become an LCPC. So if there's classes that I need there that I can take at EMCC,
Can I ask, are you in our human services program, Jennifer?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I thought your name looked familiar, but I was like, I don't teach those classes, so I'm like, I thought that was, yeah, so talk to Deborah Dog. Those two, they both went to Husson. They both graduated from there with their masters, so they're very familiar with all the people at Husson and the classes that you need. So just make sure that when you have in that program, they ask that you meet with one of them every single semester, and they meet with them to talk about the classes, and they're going to help you pick the gen eds that you're going to need. They're going to go for Husson. They're going to help you figure out the courses, because the human services need to be taken in a certain order. And so they're going to help you to figure that piece out. And then they'll talk to you about your own schedule. And if there's something that's kind of wonky and that you need, if you tell them that, then they can give you some ideas to work around that.
So
is that helpful?
I appreciate that. I've actually already done all of that.
Oh, perfect.
But what I was wondering though is, even after I've earned all of those credits and already received my associates from EMCC, if there's, because I plan on majoring in psychology with a minor in biology. So, there's a lot of other classes that EMCC has that would still meet some requirements of some of those other classes. Would it still be possible to take those classes at EMCC even after I'm already a Husson student?
In my experience, I've had students that do that. Tasha?
I need to interject on this one. Okay, so we recently got some new information. Husson has changed its policies for dual enrollment. Okay, so this was new. This is something I just found out about this summer. And actually, it was during a meeting with some of the other advisors, and we'd been getting some pushback from Husson, and we weren't really sure what was going on. So apparently they've changed, the financial aid department has changed the way that they go about authorizing taking classes at both EMCC and Husson. So this, yes, it's a very new thing because I've been advising students to, do what you're talking about, Jennifer, right? And because it's a lot cheaper, right? To take the classes here if you can get them, and then take the classes at Husson. But I think it was as of last year, they've stopped allowing that. And I think there's probably going to be some more discussion amongst the two institutions about that policy. But as it is right now, Husson is not allowing that to happen.
So it's different because I know that every college has the percentage of classes that you must take at that university or that college to get that degree, and theirs is different from that, so they don't allow them to take any from dually enrolled.
I think it's a matter of taking classes while you are at Husson, right? So if you're already a matriculated student at Husson, you then can't take classes at EMCC that financial aid will cover. That's the key. It's the financial aid piece that's always so confusing about it. And that's, so for the UMaine programs, as Rick knows, Autumn knows, right? They talk about, what is it called? It's a study away, I believe. So you can be a matriculated student on campus there and take the classes here, and financial aid will cover it. But now at Husson, basically, you've got to get all your stuff in at EMCC that you want to do before transferring. Otherwise, they're not going to cover it for financial aid. So that's, Jennifer, certainly you'll want to talk to like Mike or me or, Doug or anyone, in your department, but definitely let's talk about it, because this is a new thing. So we're still trying to understand it as well.
Yeah, I have one more question about that actually, and that is that, well, not that specifically, but so when I'll graduate at the end of the spring, but I was wondering if there was any way that I would be able to get like additional financial aid for the summer and like take classes in the summer, even though I already graduated, even if I'm starting Husson in the fall. Would that be a possibility?
Yes, but it's tricky. Okay, so there's, the hard and fast answer is technically no. There are ways of getting around it. And that's going to be, we'll want to sit down and look at that, but there are ways of doing it. And it has to do with sort of enrolling in the liberal studies program and then planning to transfer. So there are some ways to do it. So I guess the company line would be no, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So,
yeah, I don't think it would be good to switch to liberal studies though, because then that would make some weirdness, I think.
Yeah, so it's, as I said, Jennifer, it's a little tricky how it works. So why don't you, make an appointment with me or Mike, and we can talk to you about how that works. But I know what you're saying, right? Like, you're not in liberal studies, so why would you need to do that? But it just kind of has to do with some of the paperwork and the financial aid piece, that it's more of a paper type thing.
And I was going to say, we've had students in our department that have taken a similar track in the past that it did work for them because of their specific circumstances. So certainly talk to the people in TRIO about that, because it can happen, and they were able to save themselves some money and be able to stay at EMCC where they were more comfortable with the courses because of what Rick was talking about. So I know that it's happened in the past. Just talk to these guys and let them work it through with you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jane. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No problem. Like I said, we are great in our academic house, and then we say, well, go talk to TRIO about that. Or I bet TRIO could help you figure that out. Ooh, that's a gosh, and so that's why you guys are very fortunate that you're in this program, because they have those types of extra things that can really make that difference of being able to really meet all those high expectations and do the things that you're all capable of.
Jane, could I ask you a question about kind of trends in education? So
sure.
When I started teaching high school in the early 2000s, there was really too many teachers, and it was pretty competitive. And then No Child Left Behind kind of kicked a lot of people out. And it seems like every couple years it changes, whether there's too many people in education and it's really hard to get a job, and other times where they're desperate and they'll take anybody and they'll give them emergency certifications. What are you seeing about what's going on now, and what's to be expected in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, right now in the pandemic, you probably have seen that the governor had to make some executive orders to get emergency certifications to actually meet some of the needs that we've had now. But that's not really a trend in education. That's a result of what's happening now. However, though, Mike, boy, is the pendulum swinging. And you are right, it swings. But it is every year, every state has to identify for the federal government the areas of critical needs for certification. Well, EMCC programs we have been always very fortunate in that everything we're trying to prepare them for the last probably 8 to 10 years that I can remember have been identified as a critical shortage need. So if you were wanting to stay in Maine and you were a little bit flexible about where you started out and exactly what you did and knew that you could grow within the places, you would be able to get a job really securely. Some of the students from ours, even Mike, I'll take it a little bit further, is that what a lot of our students actually do if they're not feeling like they want to go on right now or that they want to go on part-time, they actually take ours, because what you can do is work as an ed tech. And every school loves to hire our ed techs because they are so good. They're like, as Rick said, they're, trained as teachers, and so they get, and then they work there, and then sometimes they can get even a little bit of help to pay for some of their classes, and they can take them at a slower pace with that. We're working on some really innovative things that can work with that, but more to come on that piece with it. But the last report, which was so incredibly sad, Mike, was every single certification in Maine is identified as a critical need at this moment. I know. Which is why we're working on some of those creative solutions with the Department of Education to see how EMCC can help support filling some of those needs in a, because we have such a good reputation. But yeah, I think that, there are certainly ones that are going to be in certain areas. Not everything is needed in every single area of Maine. If you wanted to teach English language arts or social studies, English language arts, probably social studies is probably the one that's in this area. There are positions, but it's not a secondary social studies teacher does not come up in this immediate geographic area in droves.
Right.
However, there are those in the state of Maine that you can find if you're willing to go somewhere and start out somewhere with that. So there's that, but there's jobs are there if you want to do it.
Right.
Yep.
So kind of as a follow-up, to talking about the critical shortages. So I've read a couple articles and heard some stuff on NPR, basically just kind of with the conclusion that, everybody knows that teaching is really hard and takes a lot of time to be a good teacher. But now that they're saying that they're even more overworked than they were before because of teaching online. So for those people who are going into education and thinking about it, what advice would you have to encourage them to stick with it, even though at least in the short term, or maybe even longer term, it's going to be harder than it already was, or do you see that differently?
Okay, so we'll see if Adam and Rick agree with me here on this one. So quite frankly, if I want to teach, if I don't, things are different. We moved to a standard-based curriculum, the No Child Left Behind. Standards are not a bad thing, but it also, people misunderstand how to use them. And so you can't teach, I have been teaching longer than most people, almost everybody in this Zoom has been alive. All right? I'm that old. But I don't do the same things I did when I first started out. I had to change, and I had to learn, and I had to grow, So it's not going to be the same for everybody. And while I definitely know that change is hard and that there are a lot of demands, I still like as I don't think it's hard. So that's one thing. And then in our program, we really emphasize the things that they do. And I don't think I think we were honest with you guys about how hard it was and the challenges that you'd face, right? I don't think we gave you a rosy, picture of it all. We told them our horror stories.
one of my favorite things about this program, especially working with you and Cynthia, and especially Cynthia, I think why we got along so well is that you guys are very straightforward with like, it's a very rewarding career. It's like the most rewarding thing, but there are a lot of late nights, and there, I remember, like RIP to Matt, but he brought this thing one day where it was like, people complain that teachers like only work 6 hours a day, but between PTA meetings and phone calls and after hours stuff, the teacher works more than, an average of like 65 hours a week or something like that over the course of a year. But I think it's the stuff like that it was like, you don't sugarcoat it, but that's not a bad thing. It's like, yeah. And so we know by the time we're ready to go, it's like, dude, I know this is tough, but at the end of the day, like, I just tell, the example that I give is, when you help someone figure out, like, I helped a kid learn the word dragonfly, right? And it's just a stupid example of some first grader, but like, that is forever. And it's like, wow, like you get it. Like, wow, this is why people teach, it's like whatever field you're in, man, you'll have those moments where it's like, all right, it's hard. But then like one of those moments, or a student who comes to you in the summer success program where I've been working the last 3 years, and, and like they come and they can't read or they can't write, but they're up on the dean's list. And it's like, oh man, wow. Like, so it's just that sort of stuff that at the end of the day is just like, okay, I work all these hours, but you're changing people's lives, and you're really changing people's lives, helping someone graduate college, or helping somebody change their life and feed their family and do stuff for their kids. And it's like, wow.
And we talk a lot about taking care of yourself and setting those boundaries, and how you manage it and how you keep it there. But we are very clear that it's not an 8 to 3 job. And that's okay. And as far as online teaching, I don't have it here. So I bought myself a book over the summer, because I'm like, I need some new ideas. I'm like, okay, asynchronous classes. I've never really done asynchronous classes. I've done a lot of distance education, but I've never done any of that. So I went to Corn, and I'm like, oh, that's a good book. It was actually for K-12. So if you guys need a great book on them, Rick, I've got a great book from Corn now had fabulous resources on that. But there's strategies, and you just have to find the strategies that are going to work for that.
Yep. I also wanted to talk to, I don't know if anyone here, I know that there are a few who are in human services. My wife is a mental health counselor, and she works at Acadia, and they are so desperate for qualified professionals. When my wife joined, she's been working for Acadia now for like just over a year. Before that, she worked for another company, and she got like a $2,200 sign-on bonus. Acadia's sign-on bonuses right now are $7,000.
Yeah.
And when she first moved up, my wife's got 2 master's degrees, and when she first wanted to work, in Maine, and the first place she was looking has offices like all over the state, and the woman who became her boss was like, look, we need you. You tell us where you want to work, and we will get you a job there. So just like education is hurting all those human services, careers right now. I mean, especially in the state of Maine, you're a commodity when you graduate. Like, they need you. So.
Yeah, our students have, if they're not going on, they've been very successful in getting jobs. And as you said, they're well trained. They are very skilled.
I guess my last question, and it's funny, Jenny, because when I was like, I waited till the end of my first semester, but I recall like a funny story. I didn't really check in. I was like, you know what? I'm 30 years old. I could probably figure out my 2 years here, And I had to wait to pass my entrance exam for math, so I put it off so that I didn't have to pay to take a class that got me no credit. And I finally passed the Accuplace for math, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm passed. And because I didn't ask the questions that I should have asked, I went and enrolled in Algebra 1.
I remember.
After 2 weeks of Algebra 1, I was going to Cynthia and saying, oh, I'm going to drop out of college because I'll never
Right.
pass. And she said, why are you taking Algebra 1? And I said, well, isn't that just a base math class? And she was like, no, you're in education. You have different math classes. So And I guess this will go to Mike and Tasha as well, all three of you. How do you feel? And I get this a lot now too with online where students apologize for asking questions. So how do you feel about students asking questions? Would you prefer they come to you early in the process, or do you want them to try to figure things out and then come to you when they're knee deep in mud? How do you feel about students asking questions and getting help?
Okay. So the way to make me nervous is to not ask questions. And if I'm not that clear, Rick. I mean, even in classes, you and Autumn both know that in my classes, I'm not that clear. If I've said something, you have to have some questions. And so that's the way to make me nervous. But it is true. And that's why I totally remember that so well, Rick. So well, that exact scenario. And, you know, we just want to be helpful. And I feel that I might have missed something. I'm like, I wonder why, because a lot of times sometimes I pull up a student's transcript and look, and well, we just hadn't pulled your transcript up, Rick, for whatever reason, for why, don't know why. I don't know why we really pull up sometimes transcripts, because someone asks us a question or we're checking this list or whatever, and it just hadn't come across. So when students don't ask the questions and I find out later, I sometimes feel really kind of bad that I missed something, to be honest, and wish I would have caught it. But I also know that I'm only one person and I can't do it all, but.
Yeah, I'll jump on that. I think, Jane, we're probably same exact answer here. The earlier, the better. I mean, if I would prefer getting like a million questions, right? Before, you know, that first week of school, then, you know, if that happens, that prevents a lot of the stuff that comes along as you're moving through your classes and moving through the semester, that you run into and that students run into, and they go, I can't do this, or, you know, this is too big of a barrier. I didn't realize that I needed this or that, right? So my thing is, like, literally, questions are my job, you know? So when I say I invite questions, I mean, that's why I'm here. So the sooner, the earlier, the better. And it doesn't matter what kind of question it is, honestly. I'm the type of person that, I'll be honest, there are stupid questions, that adage is a little outdated. There's definitely some stupid questions out there, but I'd say the majority of them are not stupid questions, right? I mean, there's a lot about college, a lot about navigating your journey and your career that you don't know when you're first getting started, right? And how do you know unless you ask? We provide a lot of information, but just like what Rick was saying about his experience with the math class and education, right? He got all that information and deduced, well, this is what I got to do, right? It's a perfect example of the fact that sometimes you just got to talk to someone, right? You just got to kind of ask and figure out exactly what it is you're supposed to be doing. And that's why we exist. So bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, to Tasha's point, if we don't know the answer to a question, we know somebody who does, and we can find it out for you, usually very fast. I mean, that's the great thing about the capital that we have here at EMCC. So we know people. And also to Tasha's point, though, I mean, I used to have a thing on my syllabus for high school English that said, there is such a thing as a stupid question, please don't ask them. But it's different when it comes to like asking for help. You know what I mean? I'll be very candid. Like, there are some confusing and outdated processes here at EMCC, and it's hard for us to get answers sometimes and to figure out who's who or who do I need to go to for this. And so it's no surprise that students are confused. So you shouldn't feel bad for being confused. It usually has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the university not communicating that message to you in a clear and consistent manner. So when it comes to stuff like that, like, by all means ask us, because we've probably had questions about it at some point too, and it's probably only been recently fixed, to be honest. So feel free to ask those questions. Like, I mean, when I was teaching high school English, the thing that I would tell my students that I think is the thing that makes me upset the most is people who are not inquisitive. I love people who ask questions, who want to learn more, and talking to your professors during their office hours is a great way to get to that next level and to learn more about different ideas and what you should read and different steps to be successful. So always ask questions of your professors, of us, of other students, because you're only going to learn more. And when it comes to like just being successful and asking for help, being an advocate for yourself and knowing when you need help and being able to speak up for yourself, that's what makes or breaks people graduating and not graduating, honestly.
Awesome. Yeah, I just figured I would ask that because I don't know if it's. I know that part of it is because we're not seeing people in real life, so it can be tough. But this year, man, I'm getting a lot of emails that start off with, "I'm sorry to ask. I'm sorry to ask. I'm sorry to ask." And I'm like, don't be sorry to ask. Like, you're gonna be sorry if you don't ask. That's like one of the things, in whatever roles I have, like as an educator now, it's like one of the only things that ever like really makes me mad is when you don't ask, and then it's 15 minutes before something's due or there's a deadline, and now you ask, and it's like, dude, I don't know how else I can make it clear. Please ask questions. Like Tasha said, the earlier you ask, it's like preventative medicine, right? If you stub your toe, good, okay, go see somebody. But if you let it wait and then it gets infected, then you're in big trouble. It's just like that with education. If you get questions about your FAFSA coming up, man, get it done, get it turned in the first day. If you get questions about transferring, go see your advisor right away. Get that stuff all banged out so you're not sitting in Chong Su's algebra class 15 days in going, shit, how am I going to explain to my wife that I'm dropping out of college after a year and a half?
So I feel, I want to tell you, I understand where you're coming from with the no stupid question, but I want to respectfully disagree with you because while there are questions that don't need to be asked, if you have a question, there isn't such a thing as a stupid question. What's stupid to me may not be stupid to you. If it's something that I want to know about and I don't know it, I should ask it. If I'm just asking to be like annoying or something like that, then that's the difference. But if you have, because I think that what I do hear students tell me sometimes, and after they get to know me, they're willing to do it, is they don't want to ask because they think it's stupid or someone's going to think it's a stupid question. And so I really try I really want them to know that I promise you, if you really have a question, it's not stupid. And I know that's probably what you meant, but I'm sensitive to that because I have students
that comment was more to deter high school freshmen from
yes, I totally understood.
Just from being pissants, that's all.
Totally understood.
Why do we have to do this?
Well, let's think of, and see, the other thing is that what you'll learn is you don't want to say that to me because then we'll have a conversation and I'll say, well, what do you think about that? Is there a reason that you think you might have to do that?
Inquiry
and then you'll try to get out of the conversation and I won't let you.
Yep. As a person who used to like to ask why just to push buttons, now when students ask me the same thing, Jane, I'm like, okay, you want to do this? Like, okay, I get paid to do this. So. All right, well, we've got, maybe 4.5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Do any of the students here have any questions or comments for either, myself or Tasha or Mike or Jane? Anything like that?
I have sort of a slightly off question, but I'm just kind of wondering, because it seems like there's some good brains to ask this to. If you have somebody, if you're tutoring math and someone asks, why do I need to learn this for my major? What's a good answer for that? I've got some, but I'd like to hear some better ones.
Do you want to take that, Rick? I can if you know.
Sometimes you just gotta learn it because you have to learn it. That's a requirement. I mean, sometimes that stinks, if you're taking a class you don't want to, but every class is an opportunity to learn. That's something that really changed for me at EMCC, actually. I remember going into Bill Hillary's math class and thinking, this sucks. I'm 31 years old. I don't care about counting Egyptian numbers, but once I got in there, it's just my mindset was a little different than it was at 20. I think that also has a large part to do with his maturity level, right? Everything now is a challenge. I don't get offended by so much as I did when I was 18. Why am I taking math? Now I'm like, well, I want to be able to not look like a big dummy when I'm trying to figure out the tip on a receipt when I go out to eat.
And I think that's my answer is I would say, well, let's think about why you would need to know some math. And then I would think, and I would talk with them about, when do you use math? And while it may not, you're looking at it in the problem form, let's look at how you actually are going to use it in your life. And when I teach students about teaching math in the early childhood program, one of the things we do is we make a list of all the things we did, how we used math this morning. How many of you used a clock, an alarm clock to get up in the morning? I think that's math, and so, and did you go and fill up your car? How did you know how much to pay, or the tips? Or my favorite is, did you go out for pizza with some friends? It was pre-pandemic. How did you know how many slices of pizza how many you have to cut a pie? And those are early childhood examples. Those are not that, but I think that you can also, we all have to use those lives. And why do I have to take, a humanities class? Well, because it's really important to learn about how people think differently than you. Because you're going to want to help some explanations for people. And so helping them to really see that it's not necessarily busy work and it may be a requirement, but it's to really help you to learn how to be a better thinker and to learn more about the world. And you have to live in this world, so you should learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, did that help you out at all? Did we just made Jeremy sad by going on a 3-minute diatribe about how
Come on, knowing math allows you to see all kinds of relationships that you didn't know existed before.
Yep.
Did
Right?
you know that
Identifying
math
patterns, how things are
literally-
linked.
Yeah, math is literally the study of patterns.
Yeah. You may not use Egyptian numbers, but the skill set that it takes to learn those Egyptian numbers can be applied to other things, and just kind of seeing, some topics can be a little hard to convince a student that they're going to use, but
Yep.
it can be a bit abstract how you'll use math. Plus, knowing math allows you to see the link. Like if you're studying chemistry by itself, you don't understand the link between chemistry and physics, but math explains it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some great TED Talks. I love some of them that come. There's some great TED Talks about how it all comes down to math. Some of my favorite ones.
Universal language.
Absolutely.
I thought that was music, which uses
Yeah.
math.
And language.
Math.
But foreign languages, that's math. It's patterns.
Yep.
History, the patterns that we have.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and thank Jane profusely for
Yes.
coming today. Thank you so very much. That was
Thank you
really
for
great.
inviting me.
Yeah, and thank everybody for coming. And if we didn't make it clear, if you guys have questions, you need to ask. And so Tasha will put the word out. Hopefully next week, like she said, we'll have a launch and learn it. We'll have a little bit of demo stuff and questions about Brightspace.
Mhm.
So what I'll encourage you guys to do is email me or your mentors or Tasha or Mike questions about Brightspace that you have. And if we do get this speaker here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the questions and read him the most important questions. He can demo Brightspace, show us features, and then if there's time, we'll open it up to a Q&A. So fingers crossed, because I know I have questions about Brightspace as a teacher and a student, and I know that some of you guys do. So fingers crossed we can make this happen. Be on the lookout.
Yep.
And stay safe, everybody, and thanks again for coming. We'll see you next time.
Great job, Rick. Thank you, Jane. See you guys later. Bye.